"You're not on the invitation list. It's a private event," my brother's assistant said at the door of his birthday party. My own brother's party, in a venue I had recommended, with a caterer I had referred. I smiled, turned around, and texted the caterer one word, "Stop." By 9 p.m., 140 guests were standing around an empty buffet table. My brother called me 81 times. "My name is Kevin. I'm 30 years old, and I work as a data analyst. In my family, I'm the reliable one, the one who answers calls, the one who fixes the printer, the one who reads contracts before anyone signs them, the one who shows up early and leaves late. My older brother, Brandon, is the special one." Growing up, Brandon was the story. Brandon was the photo on the fridge. Brandon was the kid my mom introduced with that proud little laugh like she personally invented him. Me? I was the extra battery pack. I learned early that the fastest way to keep peace was to be useful. If Brandon needed help with homework, I helped. If Brandon forgot his wallet, I paid. If Brandon wanted something, my parents would say, "He has potential." If I wanted something, they'd say, "You're independent. You'll figure it out." As an adult, I tried to pretend it didn't matter. I had my job, my own apartment, my own routines. I wasn't asking them for anything. But somehow, I was still getting billed for the privilege of being in the family. That's why when Brandon announced he was throwing a huge birthday party this year, I didn't even flinch when my mom said, "Kevin, you'll help, right?" Not asked. Told. I said yes anyway, because my brain still does that old math. If I help, they'll treat me better. Spoiler, they didn't. I recommended the venue because Brandon wanted classy but not boring. I knew a place downtown with a private room, good lighting, and enough parking that nobody would complain. I referred the caterer because Brandon wanted that Instagram food. I knew a small local company that did killer buffets and didn't upcharge you into bankruptcy. I even sent Brandon a spreadsheet. Guest count, dietary notes, vendor contacts, timeline. He replied with one word, "Nice." The day of the party, I showed up wearing the same boring button-down I wear to client meetings. Gift bag in one hand, phone in the other. I walked up to the entrance, heard music behind the doors, saw the glow of chandeliers through the glass, and then a young woman in a headset stepped right in front of me like I was trying to sneak into my own life. She smiled like a polite wall. "Hi. Name? Kevin. I'm Brandon's brother." She tapped her tablet. Tap, tap, tap. Then she looked up. "You're not on the invitation list. It's a private event." I actually laughed at first. Like awkward, haha, okay, sure laughter. "My brother's party," I said. "In a venue I recommended. With a caterer I referred." She gave me a customer service smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sorry, sir. If you're not on the list, I can't let you in." Behind her, the doors opened for a couple dressed like they just came from a magazine shoot. They breezed past me without even looking. The doors closed again, and I just stood there, holding a gift bag like an idiot, while bass from the music thumped through the glass. I stared at her tablet, then at the door, then at my own reflection in the window, and my first thought wasn't anger. It was this quiet, stupid thought. Of course I'm not on the list, because in my family, I'm never the guest. I'm the staff. I didn't become the reliable one by accident. It was trained into me. When we were kids, Brandon would break things and my parents would say, "He's spirited." If I broke something, it was, "Kevin, what is wrong with you?" When Brandon got a B, my mom would say, "That's my boy. He's trying." When I got an A, my dad would say, "Good. Keep it up." No smile, no hug, just next. By high school, Brandon had big dreams. He wanted to start businesses. He wanted to network. He wanted to be important. I wanted to not be yelled at. So I did the safe route: school, scholarships, part-time job, college, entry-level corporate. And while I was building a stable life, my parents acted like I was building a tool they could borrow whenever they wanted. The first big borrow happened when I was 23. Brandon got a credit card, maxed it out. Couldn't make the minimum payment. He called me at 11:48 p.m. "Kev, don't freak out. That's always how it starts." "What happened?" I asked. I need a little help." "Like, temporary? How much?" He hesitated, then said, $2,000. I remember staring at my banking app, feeling sick. $2,000 was half my rent and groceries for a month back then. I said, "Why would you spend $2,000 you don't have?" He got defensive instantly. Because I'm investing in myself. You wouldn't get it. I said, I get math. You don't have it. He sighed like I was annoying him. Mom said you'd help. Of course she did. My mom called the next morning, voice soft and sad, like she was calling about a dying puppy. Kevin, your brother made a mistake. He's stressed. Just help him this once. I said, he's not even asking me, he's sending you. He's embarrassed, she snapped. Don't make this harder. So I paid it, and that was the moment they learned something important about me. I fold. After that, it wasn't rare emergencies. It was constant little drains. Brandon's car insurance accidentally lapsed. Brandon's rent was messed up because his roommate bailed. Brandon needed just a small boost for a new project. Then my parents joined in. Dad needed help bridging a bill. Mom needed a temporary loan for a medical deductible that somehow never got repaid. Every request came wrapped in the same words. Family helps family. But it was never equal. If I needed help, I didn't ask because I already knew the answer. The one time I did ask, just once, I was 27 and my laptop died during a work crunch. I asked my dad if I could borrow $800 and I'd pay him back in 2 paychecks. He laughed. You make good money. Figure it out. And my mom added, don't be dramatic. But Brandon could say, I need $5,000, and everyone would mobilize like it was a national emergency. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was the way they treated it like it was already theirs. Like my savings account was a family fund and I was the unpaid manager. So when Brandon planned this birthday party and he called me like, yo, you know anyone who can get a nice venue? I didn't even hesitate. I told myself, this is different. This is just a party. Then the party turned into a production. Brandon wanted a private venue because he didn't want randoms. He wanted a signature cocktail. He wanted a buffet that looked expensive. He wanted a DJ. And he wanted it fast. He'd text me at 1 a.m. Do you still have that caterer contact? Can you ask if they can do vegan options? Can you check the contract? I don't want to get scammed. And I'd do it. Because I'm Kevin. I do the spreadsheet. I read the fine print. I make sure the numbers don't explode. At one point I said, are you paying deposits on time? He replied, relax. I got it. Then my mom called and said, Kevin, you're so good at this. Brandon really appreciates you. I almost believed her. That's the embarrassing part. A week before the party, I met Brandon for coffee to hand him printed copies of the venue agreement and catering invoice, because I'm apparently his unpaid project manager. He showed up 20 minutes late wearing a watch that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I slid the folder across the table. He barely glanced at it. Nice, he said again. Same word, same tone. Then he leaned back and smiled. Oh, by the way, this is going to be a curated guest list, like important people. I frowned. Okay, he shrugged. So it's not a +1 type situation. I'm not asking to bring a date, he smirked. Yeah. I mean, you know how it is. I felt a little chill in my stomach. What does that mean? Brandon took a sip of his drink and said casually, like it was nothing, I just don't want any weird energy. It's my night. Weird energy, I repeated. He laughed. Bro, don't do that thing where you make everything deep. And that was it. That was the warning shot. I should have listened, because standing at that door being told I wasn't on the list, I realized something simple. This wasn't an accident. This was a choice. I stood there for a second, just blinking. The assistant's smile stayed glued on. Sir, I do need you to step aside. You're blocking the entrance. I stepped aside, not because I was intimidated, because my body went weirdly calm, like it already knew what my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I said, can you check again? Kevin, last name Patel. Tap, tap, tap. She tilted the tablet slightly away from me like I might grab it. No, not on the list? I swallowed. Can you call Brandon? Just tell him I'm here. She shook her head. I can't disrupt the event. If you're not on the list, you're not on the list. I looked past her, through the glass, and I saw Brandon inside, laughing, holding court. Big grin, big gestures. Like a politician at a fundraiser, he looked so comfortable, like the world loved him. And then the anger finally showed up. Not hot anger, cold anger. The kind where your hands stop shaking because you've stopped begging. I pulled out my phone and texted Brandon. Me, I'm at the door. They say I'm not on the list. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then my phone rang. Brandon. I answered. What the hell are you doing? He snapped like I ruined his vibe by existing. I said, they won't let me in. He lowered his voice. I could hear music behind him. Yeah, so listen. It's just, this is a private thing. Work people, investors. You get it. No, I said. I don't. He exhaled sharply. Kevin, don't do this right now. Do what? Make it awkward. It's my birthday. I laughed once, short and ugly. You used my venue, my caterer, my planning, and you didn't put me on the list. He got quiet for a beat, then said the sentence that finally snapped the last thread. You're being sensitive. You weren't even invited like that. You were helping. I just stared at the door. Helping. That was my role. That's what he thought I was. Not family. A resource. I said very calmly, okay. He sounded relieved. Good. So just go home and we'll talk later. Don't ruin this. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten him. I didn't even insult him. I just said, happy birthday. Then I hung up. The assistant was watching me like she expected me to argue more. Instead, I stepped a few feet away from the entrance, out of the way, and opened my contacts. I scrolled to the caterer, the same caterer I had referred, the same caterer whose owner had texted me earlier that day. We're set. 140 guests, right? I stared at the screen for a second. My thumb hovered, and I told myself one thing. This isn't about revenge. This is about closure. So I typed one word. Stop. And I hit send. Then I turned my phone face down in my palm like it was suddenly too heavy. The music behind the door kept thumping. People kept walking in. Nobody looked at me. And I stood there on the sidewalk holding a gift bag I didn't want to give anymore, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. I didn't stay to watch the chaos start. I went to my car, sat there for a full minute, and just breathed. My chest felt tight, not from panic, but from years of swallowing everything like it was my job. Then my phone started buzzing. Brandon again. I ignored it. A text from my mom. Mom, where are you? Brandon said you're acting crazy. I stared at that word. Crazy. Not, are you okay? Not, what happened? Just, why aren't you being useful the way we trained you to be? I drove home. On the way, my phone kept lighting up like a strobe. Calls. Voicemails. More texts. I didn't answer. Around 8:15 p.m., I got a message from the caterer. Caterer, hey Kevin. Just confirming, you want us to stop service? I replied, yes. Do not set up, do not serve. I'll cover any reasonable cancellation fee. Because here's the thing. I wasn't trying to burn anyone innocent. I wasn't trying to hurt the caterer. I was just done being used as the silent support beam for people who pretended I wasn't part of the house. At 9:02 p.m., my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered because my brain still does that old thing. It was Brandon from someone else's phone. His voice was sharp and thin like he'd been yelling. What did you do? I said. I went home. No, don't play dumb. The food isn't here. The staff is saying they got told to stop. I leaned back on my couch and stared at my ceiling fan. I didn't play dumb, I said. I played accurate. There was a pause and I could hear other voices in the background. Someone saying, is the buffet coming or not? Someone laughing awkwardly. Brandon hissed, you embarrassed me. I said, you erased me, he snapped. It's a party, Kevin. You're acting like I killed your dog. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I said you told me I wasn't invited like that. You said I was helping. Brandon's breathing sounded heavy. You're ruining my relationships, he said, like I was sabotaging his career. I laughed again, quiet. Brandon, you ruined our relationship years ago. You just didn't think I'd notice. Then my mom grabbed the phone. I could tell instantly, because she does this thing where she starts sweet and ends sharp. Kevin, honey, please, whatever you're feeling, we can talk about it tomorrow. Just fix this. Fix this. Not apologize. Not acknowledge. Just fix. I said, no. Her voice hardened. What do you mean, no? I mean, no. She went silent for a second, then did the guilt voice. Your brother has guests. Important guests. Do you want him to look bad? I said he already made me look bad, he just didn't care. My mom's tone flipped like a switch. You're jealous. I actually blinked at that. Jealous of what? Being treated like I don't exist? Kevin, she snapped, you always do this. You make yourself the victim. I felt my jaw clench, but I kept my voice even. This isn't me making myself anything. This is me finally refusing the role you gave me. She tried a different angle. Think about your father. Think about the family. I said, I have. For years. Constantly. That's the problem. And then Brandon's voice came back, furious and shaky. He said, I called you 81 times. I checked my call log. He wasn't exaggerating. 81 missed calls. I said, that's wild, he shouted. Answer your phone. I said, you didn't want me at your door. You don't get me on demand now. He sounded like he couldn't process that I wasn't folding. Kevin, I swear to God, I cut him off, calm. This isn't about revenge. This is about closure. Silence. Real silence, like the sentence landed and nobody knew where to put it. Then my mom whispered, disgusted, you've changed. I said, no, I've just stopped pretending. And I hung up. After that, the messages got uglier. Cousins I barely talked to texted me, bro, that was messed up. Family doesn't do that. One uncle even called and left a voicemail that was basically a lecture about respect. Not one person asked why I was standing outside my own brother's party like a stranger. Not one. And that told me everything. The next morning, I woke up to 37 more missed calls. Brandon, Mom, Dad, random numbers. I made coffee. I ate toast. I went for a walk. I didn't rush to fix anything. For the first time, their chaos wasn't my emergency. Around noon, my dad finally texted something longer than a sentence. Dad, Kevin, what you did was unacceptable. You humiliated your brother. You owe him an apology. I stared at it, then typed back, me. I showed up. I was denied at the door. I was told I was only helping. I'm done paying to be treated like staff. My mom called immediately. I answered once because I wanted it clean. She didn't even say hello. Are you proud of yourself? I said, I'm calm. She scoffed. You cost us so much money. There it was. Not feelings. Not family. Money. I said, Brandon cost himself money when he decided I wasn't worth a seat in the room I helped build. She started crying. Real or performance? I honestly couldn't tell anymore. Kevin, you're tearing us apart. I said, no. I'm stepping out of the middle. Then I told her my boundary, simple and clear. I'm not paying for Brandon's life anymore. I'm not planning his events. I'm not covering his bills. And if I'm not invited, I'm not showing up. She snapped. So you're punishing us. I said, no. I'm protecting myself. She tried one last push. You'll regret this. I said, maybe. But I regret the last 10 years more. Then I ended the call. After that, I set my phone to silence for them. I muted the group chat. I stopped responding to guilt texts that started with family and ended with money. And you know what happened? Nothing exploded. My jaw didn't collapse. My life didn't end. The sky didn't fall. The only thing that changed was that I finally had space to breathe. Here's the moral, if anyone needs it. If your family only calls you when they need you, they don't miss you, they miss what you provide. And if you're only invited when you're useful, you're not family to them. You're a resource. I'm Kevin. I'm not a resource anymore.